Hey guys, John here. I want to talk to you about the subject that not a lot of people want to ponder or think about, and that's suicide. And this may be a little different than what you've heard in the past, but I really want you to think about this and chew on this as these thoughts begin to creep up in every single person from time to time. I mean, it's been said in the spiritual community that there's 3 different times in our lives that we could check out. One is when we're about 27 years old, which you've seen like Amy Winehouse and Kurt Cobain and others check out. So many people at 27 years old. And then one midlife, and then one when you're a senior. And those ages could vary, or anywhere in between. It depends on what trauma or situation or challenge you're going through. Look at Robin Williams, so many others. And I just want to say that any clinical definition of this, trying to, deal with it on a psychological or a clinical level with prescription drugs or trying to use therapy, therapy can help. Prescription drugs only mask the problem for a little while. But the real issue comes down to what's going on internally, and everyone can actually transcend any kind of thought of suicide or the actual attempt. They can literally transmute it and dissolve it by what I'm about to say. When you look at your own life, you actually have an authentic nature that exudes a frequency, a harmonic or a frequency. In other words, it's a musical note that your spirit is actually made of. It's more musical than it is anything else. And the proof of this is because when you look at the entirety of the cosmos of the universe and you study science at all, you would know that there is music woven through, melody woven through every particle, every planet, every star, and in the music psyche of the individual, the psyche of the individual across the face of the earth. Music is a universal language, therefore our spirit, the real authentic us, is more musical than anything else. So when you keep that in mind, it's more of a flow and a quantum realm that actually has movement to it, just like the sun or any planet, moving at a high rate of speed. So that authenticity that you are has a voice. It is the real you. The other part of you is your ego, which has to do with your soul realm. Your soul realm has issues. Every one of us. We were born into this family, and we don't need to go into details of that, but you know the issues, right? Maybe you were traumatized as a kid. Maybe you went through some real horrific things and you've been traumatized and troubled, and you just medicate it, right? Through addictions, food, alcohol, drugs, whatever it may be, or work or working out. It could be any kind of thing that actually helps you keep your mind off of that trauma. So that has a voice. That's your ego. Your ego has a voice. And sometimes it's so strong that we literally think it's all of us. We think it's the real, genuine us. And it's not. It's an illusion, in fact, because it's built upon a personal reality, a personality that you were trained and conditioned by since you were a kid. So from ages of 0 to about 6 years old, you are a human sponge. I am a human sponge. Science has already proven this, medical community. Don't need to go into all the details, look it up. You're a human sponge. And so your mind and your brain is forming until about the age of 7, right around that age, may not be exact. Then the ego starts to construct itself. It starts to go into survival mode because it's now coming of age, so to speak, in the egoic-centric realm to say that I've got this. I'll take over now. Meaning in the mind, I'll take over now. And I'll form my own little personal reality into the things that I've been conditioned by. And so depending on your upbringing, you're going to be conditioned by some things. Good or bad, or indifferent, or in between, right? So that ego, depending on what level of trauma it has experienced in its youth, and if it's not dealt with, if it's not healed, if it's not looked at and held by love, if it is not witnessed by nature, if it is not witnessed by God, more importantly, unconditional love, not a religious God, but unconditional love, and allowed to heal, then it will be a little boy or a little girl inside of a grown body when you get older. And so you see a lot of little boys running around that are grown men, a lot of little girls running around that are grown women, depending on that level of trauma, and it has a voice. Now, that voice in the egocentric world is the one that says, off yourself, when the authentic you is rising to say, look, I am finding out and discovering who I really am. So when that part of you starts breaking through, if you will, or dissolving the trauma, you start getting therapy, you start getting help, you start getting healed by God, whatever it may be, then the ego looks at the authentic real you and says, no way. I'm not going to let you take control over the driving patterns here. I'm not going to let you can take control over my life, basically. So what I'm going to do is, depending on the extreme nature of the situation, then rather than letting the authentic self, or it believes it, the authentic self is going to rise and take over, then it's going to try to off you. Suicide, i.e. suicide. And say, why don't we just check out because it's too difficult. Nobody understands me. I've been too traumatized and wounded. There is no overcoming this. Nothing can help. So I'm going to take you out. And there's a war that goes on in between. This is why ancient scripture says that the flesh and the spirit are contrary to one another because they do not want to let each other do as they wish. Now, the spirit is the greater force. It's the greater power. If it's fed the right food, if you will, by peace, rest, surrender, thinking on good things, getting out in nature more than anywhere else in the concrete jungle, doing those things that are good for it to gain strength, then it will rise and begin to shine the light on that egoic part of us and say, you're a liar. I'm not going to listen to you. That's not the real me. That's the war that goes on, but we will win out. You will win out if you have suicide thoughts by saying, hold on a minute. Is that really the real me that's speaking right now? So I often ask people, whose voice is that? Which voice is speaking when the suicidal thoughts come up? Which voice is actually speaking the loudest right now? Again, if you don't believe that you have a true, authentic you, which is your spirit, that's greater than your body. Actually, science has proven that your spirit is actually about 15 feet outside of your body. You're in your spirit. Your spirit's not actually in you. Science has already proven that. So when we feed it the right stuff, kindness, gentleness, goodness, peace, self-control, love, joy, all those things, we have a will. We can do that. When we feed it, then the suicidal thoughts come up and say, you're a liar. I'm not listening to you. I send love to you so that the ego can heal. We can't kill the ego, guys. That's that's been our survival up until this point for a lot of us. We want to heal the ego. So we send love to it by our greater self, our greater part of who we are, which is our spirit. So which voice are you going to yield to when it comes up and says, why don't we just take you out of here? This is huge for men right now, especially around, certain times of holidays or certain times a year. Let's listen to the voice that's the greater part of who we are, because there's absolutely nothing wrong with the greater part of who you are. Nothing. Zero. You are made complete. You are whole. The ego just doesn't want you to believe that and wants to take you out. So which voice is speaking? Remember that.